a vast kingdom renowned for its grandeur and magnificence. The palace walls were adorned with gold and silver, and the ceilings shimmered at all times, covered in glistening pearls. In the palace courtyard, majestic deer and peacocks roamed freely, and an air of royal splendor filled every corner. From the outside, everything appeared so perfect and grand, as if heaven had descended upon the earth. But within, a deep secret was hidden. This palace was not just a symbol of luxury and prestige. It was a gilded cage where lives were trapped, especially one soul, Princess Zala. Princess Zala, the sole heir to the kingdom, was a symbol of beauty and power. Her smile shone like the rays of the sun, her jewelry sparkled like the stars. But behind the glow of her face lay a profound loneliness. Despite having everything, her life followed a strictly determined path. Every morning passed in rituals, every evening was consumed by royal obligations. Though she was surrounded by maids and attendants, there was no one with whom she could share the thoughts of her heart. Since childhood, she had only seen one world, a world where honor, tradition, and power reigned supreme, but freedom did not exist. Deep within her heart, she dreamed of a world where she could live by her own will, where she had the right to breathe freely. But that dream was confined to stories and fantasies. Princess Zala's life was not just about glory and wealth. It was a collection of rigid rules and unbreakable bonds. Every step she took was weighed down by royal etiquette, and every decision was tied to the dignity of the kingdom. A princess could only befriend or love those deemed worthy of her status. According to the traditions of Rajputana, even the thought of a relationship with a mere servant or commoner was forbidden. This was a firmly drawn line. Whoever dared to cross it was destined for destruction. Her every day began with the same rituals and ended with the same rules. Being a king's daughter meant her life was dictated by others' decisions. Her own dreams held no value. But a question repeatedly arose in Princess Zala's heart. Is this life truly hers? Was she simply living to fulfill her duties as a king's daughter, or did she have an identity of her own? At night, she would gaze at the towering walls of the palace, realizing they were not just for protection, but also the boundaries of her dreams. One day, would she accept her fate or dare to write her own story? Her entire life had been preordained, but a day was coming, a day that would change everything. An intriguing servant with a different way of thinking was about to become a part of the story. A love that was neither planned nor understood, but had the power to change everything. Would Zala be able to write her own destiny, or would her life always remain in her father's hands? New servants were being recruited in the royal palace. Each servant was carefully examined to ensure that only the most loyal and obedient to the kingdom's laws were allowed entry into the palace. Every new servant was taught the rules of serving the royal family and the boundaries they could never cross. No servant could even dream of breaking the king's laws. Among the new recruits was Datu. As he stepped into the palace for the first time, his gaze carried something that set him apart from the others. Datu did not seem like just another servant. Unlike the others, his face showed neither blind devotion nor fear, but intelligence and awareness. Was he just another ordinary servant, or was he something more? Datu was different from the rest. He didn't just follow orders blindly. He thought for himself. His wisdom and courage made him stand out. While the other servants obeyed without question, Datu analyzed the situation before making a decision. Princess Zala noticed this as well. A servant who not only served but also had a mind of his own. This was unusual. One day, Princess Zala went out for a horse ride. The palace guards surrounded her. Everything seemed calm and normal. Suddenly, her horse reared wildly, out of control. The violent movements almost threw Zala off. The palace guards hesitated. Reacting quickly seemed impossible. Just then, a shadow leaped forward. Datu, without fear, without hesitation, he rushed to her rescue. With his quick thinking and courage, he managed to calm the horse and save the princess. Everyone was stunned. How could a mere servant have such courage? For the first time, Princess Zala looked at a servant differently. She saw Datu not as a subordinate, but as an equal. Was this just admiration, or the beginning of a story that would change everything? Princess Zala had never met someone who connected with her thoughts rather than her status. At first, she only spoke to Datu when necessary, but slowly she felt drawn toward him. One day, when everything was quiet, Zala asked Datu a question without fear or hesitation. "What are your dreams, Datu?" Without hesitation, Datu replied, "Dreams are not just for princes and princesses. Even an ordinary man can think big." Zala was shocked. She had never expected such words from a servant. Every servant she had known only obeyed orders without question. But Dadu was different. His words were not bound by royal traditions, nor did they show submission. They carried raw truth, making the princess question her own life. Was everyone's fate truly pre-written? Dadu's thoughts were different, and so were his stories. He told Zala about the free people of the jungle, where there were no kings, no servants, only freedom. "Did you know there is a place far away where people live for themselves, not for the rules of others?" Datu asked. Zala found this strange. She had never seen the world outside her palace. For her, the world only meant the kingdom, the royal family, and its laws. Datu shared more stories, tales of true love, examples of loyalty, and the mysteries of unknown lands. Zala listened intently, as if new dreams were awakening inside her. She wondered, is a person's identity truly defined only by their lineage and power? If a servant could think so deeply, why was it that a princess could only marry a prince? For the first time, Princess Zala questioned the laws of her own world. Is it true that only a prince is worthy of a princess? Datu's words held a truth that sparked new dreams in Zala's heart. His thoughts were not filled with arrogance, but with experience. Datu said, "A person's worth is not determined by their birth, but by their actions." Zala's mind was restless. If this was true, why did the king insist that only a powerful prince could be her husband? Was this just a simple friendship, or was her heart drifting toward something else? One night, when the entire palace was asleep, Zala quietly stepped into the royal garden. Her heart was restless, and she felt that she couldn't sleep without talking to Datu. Datu was there too. An unspoken connection began to form between them. Zala softly asked, "Datu, why are you different?" Datu smiled. "Because I want to live, not just bow down." That night, they began to understand each other without any boundaries. No conflicts, no rules. Just two souls listening to each other's hearts. The closeness between them grew, but they both knew this relationship had no future. Hook. Would this bond turn into love or become a mistake that would destroy everything? A strange thread was beginning to tie Princess Zala and Datu together. But would this turn into love, or would it be a mistake that would ruin everything? So far, this secret had been hidden within the palace walls. But for how long? Whispers had begun to spread in the inner chambers of the palace. The eyes of the maids and servants had noticed something that was no longer a secret. The growing closeness between Princess Zala and a mere servant was no longer hidden. Some servants understood that this was not just an ordinary bond. Sometimes Zala's smile seemed deeper. Sometimes the way Datu looked at her changed. "Why has the princess started talking so much to the servants?" the maids whispered among themselves. Some wanted to keep the matter silent, but others began preparing to take this news to the king. Even the palace guards sensed this change. A princess's behavior was not supposed to change so drastically, and this was something that could never be accepted. Among the palace staff, there was one treacherous servant who lived only for his own benefit. He realized that if he exposed this secret to the king, his position in the kingdom would be secured forever. This servant was one of the most trusted people in the royal court. Secretly, he began setting up a network of spies inside the palace. One day, Princess Zala and Datu were speaking in a secluded corner of the palace. A single moment of carelessness could destroy everything. The treacherous servant hid in the shadows, watching everything unfold. Just one more moment. This secret must reach the king. But the question remained, would he expose them immediately, or was he waiting for a better opportunity? At that moment, a new guest entered the palace. Prince Taro, a powerful, arrogant prince who had immense confidence in his strength and worthiness. He had come to marry Princess Zala. The king looked at Taro and saw a warrior, a perfect heir. "He is worthy of my lineage. He is the right match for my daughter." But Princess Zala's heart now belonged to a mere servant. Taro sensed that Zala was growing distant from him. There was no love in her eyes. only an unfamiliar sadness. I need to find out why Princess Zala is acting so strangely, Taro thought. He too began searching for the hidden truth. Until now, Zala and Datu's relationship had remained hidden, but now it was just one step away from reaching the king. Someone had already seen them together. Prince Taro had also noticed Zala's change in behavior. He wanted to know the reason behind it. Would this secret remain hidden, or would it become a truth that would change everything? The palace functioned as it always had, but inside a storm was brewing. One day, a servant who frequently moved between the royal court and the king's trusted advisors made a fatal mistake. He spoke words that should have never been uttered. "The princess is in love with a servant." These words reached the king's ears like poison. His expression changed in an instant. A mighty king's daughter with a mere servant? This was an insult to the royal bloodline. The king's lips remained still, but inside him, a fire had ignited, one that was about to consume the entire palace. The next day, the royal court was summoned. Everyone was present: the ministers, generals, servants, maids, and even Prince Taro. The moment the king declared in front of everyone that his daughter had formed a bond with a mere servant, his roar shook the palace walls. "I will not let this disgrace live." Princess Zala's mother was terrified. She tried to console her daughter, but no one had the courage to utter a single word before the king. The king stormed across the royal court like a madman, his eyes burning red like a river of fire. Everyone remained silent. No one had the strength to face the king's wrath. Before nightfall, the soldiers were sent to capture Datu. On a dark night, without warning, Datu was forcibly dragged away. His hands were tied behind his back, his mouth sealed shut so he could not call for help. Princess Zala witnessed everything with her own eyes. "Stop them! This is wrong!" she screamed, but no one listened. "You may still be a princess, but your heart belongs to a mere servant. You must be punished for this," Zala cried and pleaded, but she was locked away in a distant part of the palace, where she couldn't even see Datu's fate unfold. Datu was dragged before the king. His destiny had been sealed. "A mere servant dares to trap my daughter in his web?" The king roared. His rage knew no limits. A deadly silence filled the court. All eyes were on Datu. Some felt pity for him, but no one dared to speak against the king. Prince Taro, too, was observing the scene. But on his face there was no fear, only a strange smirk. This was his chance to win. At last the king delivered his final verdict. "This servant will be executed in front of everyone. Let him serve as an example, so no servant dares to forget his place again." Princess Zala screamed like a madwoman. "Punish me however you want, but don't kill Datu." But the king's heart was now filled with nothing but rage and vengeance. Right before Princess Zala's eyes, her love was about to be erased from existence. Was this truly the end? Or was there still a glimmer of hope left? Tears in her eyes, Princess Zala wandered through the unseen corridors of her palace, a place only the royal family knew about. Her mind held only one thought: there had to be a way to save Datu. She remembered something her childhood nanny had once told her. Beneath the palace lay a secret passage, built for the royal family's escape in times of great crisis. But now it was needed for something else entirely. She searched for the passageway until she found an old hidden door behind a crumbling wall. It was difficult to open, but she managed. Was this truly a path to freedom? Or was it just another trap leading to death? When Zala finally reached Datu, she told him everything about the hidden tunnel. "Datu, we can escape through this. You must survive." But Datu remained calm. His eyes held neither fear nor hesitation. "If I must die, I will die with honor. I will not run." His voice was firm. Zala's anger flared. "If you won't leave, then I will die here with you." A heated argument followed. On one side was Datu's pride and dignity, which demanded he face the king's punishment. On the other side was Princess Zala's love and desire for freedom, which urged him to fight for survival. A choice had to be made. Would Datu escape? Princess Zala and Datu planned a daring escape. The entire palace was heavily guarded. Soldiers stood watch at every corner. "We must wait for the perfect night," Zala said, "when the darkness is so deep that no one can see us." Datu was still uncertain, but there was an unshakable fire in Zala's eyes. "Tonight, We either live or we disappear forever. But one small mistake could cost them their lives. As Zala and Datu prepared to escape, an unexpected turn of events occurred. A trusted man of the king approached them. "You must run, and I know how to help," he said. But the real question was he an ally or a traitor? Was this just another trap? Or was there truly someone willing to help them? The escape was about to become even more dangerous. Zala and Datu risked their lives, attempting to flee through the hidden tunnel. It was a dark night. Everything seemed calm. But fate was not on their side. Just as they reached the final exit of the passage, the glint of swords blocked their path. The king's soldiers had sealed every route, every escape. Datu held Zala's hand tightly, but there was nowhere left to run. Their escape attempt had failed. The soldiers forcefully captured Datu, while Zala screamed helplessly. Was this the end of their love story, or the beginning of something even more tragic? The royal court was packed. Soldiers, ministers, maids, everyone was present. Datu knelt with his hands bound, his face exhausted but fearless. On the throne, the king sat in all his power, burning with fury. For the last time, Princess Zala cast aside her fear and stood before her father. "I love Datu, and that will never change." A deafening silence filled the hall. The king, hearing his daughter's words, exploded with rage. "A servant! You disgrace my lineage!" Zala's eyes welled with tears, but her voice remained unwavering. A final decision had to be made. The king delivered a horrifying verdict. "Datu will be executed immediately." Zala wept and screamed, but the king remained unmoved. The order had been given. Datu was prepared for his final punishment. The court was silent. No one dared to speak against the king. Was this truly the end of their love story? As the soldiers were about to take Datu away, Prince Taro suddenly stepped forward. "Stop!" Everyone turned toward him. "I have a new plan that will change everything." Zala looked at Taro in shock. Was Taro about to become the true villain of this tale? Or was he about to reveal a secret that would change everything?